Great to have you with us, Secretary. Welcome back to Balance of Power. As we look ahead to this report on jobs at the end of the week, this survey was taken right at the time when Omicron was peaking. How much of an interruption do you think this will show?
Well, I just want to put this into context that the Omicron variant is highly transmissible. In early January, over 9 million people were out sick with the variant, with the Omicron. The survey was done roughly around the week of January 12th. There were millions of people that were still not in work. A lot of them were out sick. Some folks were out sick,
right.
And if they were not eligible for paid leave, they're going to be marked as not working when in fact they are. So I think that, you know, we're going to be watching that, but certainly I'm going to revert back to what happened in 2021. President Biden laid out a plan. 6.4 million people in America went back to work. Unemployment rate at 3.2%. Great GDP numbers the other day. And his economic recovery plan is working. So regardless of what happens this week, I certainly am looking forward as we go into 2022, getting more people back to work in America.
Is this the new normal then, Secretary, that continued volatility based on what COVID is doing? We're certainly getting used to this routine.
Well, it's been 2 years now. I mean, you know as well as anybody, when I started this during the beginning of the pandemic, I was the mayor of Boston. And certainly as I drive around the streets of Boston, drive around the streets here in Washington, or go around the country, we have not returned back to fully people in the workplace and back to work yet. But we are working to live with this virus, I should say, and the different variants. So I think for the foreseeable future, we have to continue to move forward here. But certainly there's signs are going in the right direction. The president is certainly very focused on making sure he addresses all the financial issues in our country, but making sure that Americans are safe, but also Americans go back to work. That's the key here, to balance that.
You've had to do some big revisions through the pandemic, Secretary. Do you need to overhaul? Is it time to change the way these surveys are taken by labor?
No, I just think it's the times we're living in. When you think about this, in the beginning of January, 9 million people with the Omicron variant that couldn't go to work because they were sick. 9 million people. You know, very different situation than say maybe March of 2020 when we were dealing with the beginning days of COVID. But certainly, you know, we're looking at a time that is very unpredictable in everything that we do, except for continuing to move forward to get our economy back and people back to work. We're seeing great job growth. We're seeing, you know, wages going up. We're seeing people being able to choose now. The job market has an opportunity to choose where they want to work. Those are things that people couldn't say 3 years ago before the pandemic.
There's news today of a new variant, a sub-variant to be exact, Secretary, said to be even more transmissible. It's a version of Omicron. Will this force more employers, do you think, and based on what you're hearing from employers, to delay return to office orders?
I think to some degree, but I think at the end of the day, you know, the COVID task force laid out a plan, the CDC laid out a plan. We have a way to continue to move America forward. It's by getting vaccinated, getting people boosted. The numbers show that with the Omicron variant, people got sick, but not as sick as previous variants or the beginning of COVID. Continue to wear masks, even just to protect yourself, whether there's a mask mandate or not. I think people should take care of their own personal health. We just need to continue to move forward and adjust and live with the virus for now. When I say that, long term, hopefully we'll be beyond this point. But right now, I think it really is important that we continue to work to get people back to work. You know, we can't have, it's not going to be good for our economy if we don't get more people back to work. More importantly, it's not going to be good for families if we can't get them back to work. And there's a whole bunch of other things I could talk about today, but I certainly feel, I feel good where we're headed.
What more can you do about that? We've been focused on labor force participation for so many months. We talk about it every month when this report comes out. Secretary, inspiring people to get back to work because of so many different factors. I know when you were mayor of Boston, you had a number of programs to help to bring underprivileged youth into the building trades, other ways to get people off the sidelines and into work. How creative can the administration get this year to do that very thing?
Well, we have to continue that. I mean, I think that with at the Department of Labor, what I'm responsible for, we have money that goes into job training, workforce development, apprenticeships. The president put together an apprenticeship task force to look at supply chain and trucking, creating opportunities into that field. We're looking at other ways of getting people back to work. I think that, you know, as we think about the COVID, as we think about COVID as a whole, we really think about what are we going to look like afterwards, not just what the job site looks for, the office looks like, the work looks like, but also also the job training. I think we have better opportunities now to have people trained in workforce development programs that tie them to a job. So we just need to continue talking to businesses and industries and workers' rights and unions to really think about how do we make these investments to make sure we get people back into jobs that pay better.
The alternative, Secretary Walsh, is maybe not a good one, that we've transitioned into a new regime, that labor force participation will not return to where it was pre-pandemic. Is that something that you're allowing for, a possibility that you could see?
No, I think as we continue to move forward, more and more people are going to go back to work, and more people need to go back to work. Well, I think people are expecting now to go back to work and earning more money and bettering their situation, their family situation. And President Biden has said from day one, actually, when he was a candidate for president, he talked about creating pathways into the middle class.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't think he probably did, but you factor in COVID and the impacts of COVID, we have a real opportunity in the United States of America right now to make sure that people that live in our country that were working in low-wage jobs have opportunities, whether it's through job training, apprenticeships, or other opportunities to get the infrastructure bill that the president worked so hard on to pass, to get people into better-paying jobs to move our economy forward.
Well, as the president also said, I believe, standing in the East Room of the White House, he said, "You want people to come back to work?" He leaned into the microphone, Secretary, and he said, "Pay them more." Is that the answer?
Well, I think that's part of the answer. I think it's also about not just pay them more, but also I think we have to be real intentional about job training. And you know, we have people in this country, communities of color, that quite honestly have been left behind for so long, that we need to be intentional about making sure we're making investments in the communities of color, in the African American community in our country, in the Latino community in our country. I think that's one way of doing it. But it's also about how do we build a strong economy to continue the strong economy that we've seen this last year coming back. I mean, we're living in very interesting, unique times. This is unlike anything that any White House has ever experienced before. Well, maybe 100 years ago.
Yeah.
So you know, we're going to continue to follow the president as he continues to put plans out there to move our economy forward and moving people forward.
I don't know if it's possible to have long-term projections, even a couple of months out, when being so dependent on the data and COVID, Secretary. But where do you see us going into the spring and summer? Will that seasonality of COVID lifting help to bring people back to work?
Well, if I could answer that question, Joe, I'd probably be in a different job. So we're taking this a day at a time right now.